Aloha and welcome to A Course in Miracles, the Workbook for Students, Lesson 100. My part is essential to God's plan for salvation. Just as God's Son completes His Father, so your part in it completes your Father's plan. Salvation must reverse the mad belief in separate thoughts and separate bodies, which lead to separate lives that go their separate ways. Love that line. One function shared by separate minds unites them in one purpose, for each one of them is equally essential to them all. And this one function that we share is God's plan for salvation, or the atonement principle, or the undoing of the separation. That's the thought that unites each and every one of us. God's will for you is perfect happiness. Perfect happiness. And this is kind of different from a lot of religions that sort of see God's will for us is to serve Him and, lay down our own will and do whatever this deity wants us to do. And often that includes things like suffering and doing things we don't want to do. And the classic example is in the Gospels, where Jesus doesn't really want to go and suffer on the cross. And He spends an agonizing night till He finally agrees to do it. But this idea of suffering for Jesus and suffering for God, you don't really find that in A Course in Miracles. But you do find it in the Old Testament, which is the Old Testament. God was like this tribal deity that would fight Israel's battles and bless them as long as they remained totally faithful to Him. But if they didn't, then He would curse them. And so you don't really find this particular deity in the Old Testament. It would be hard to imagine that this particular God's will for His people was perfect happiness. I mean, you could sort of say that maybe in a kind of a roundabout way, that if He could force them into doing what He wanted them to do, then He would give them happiness. But that is a totally different kind of God than the God that we experience in the Course in Miracles. This God's will for us is perfect happiness. So why should we choose against His will? The part that He has saved for you to take in working out His plan is given you that you might be restored to what He wills, which is perfect happiness. When you really think about it, isn't that what we really want? Isn't that what motivates us? Is we do the things that we think will make us happy. I mean, almost everything we do, our ultimate goal is happiness. And that's what God's ultimate goal for us is. And if you think about it, if you're a parent, what else would you want more than anything for your child than that they be happy? So it's very relatable to me as a father to think, that's what I want my kids to do. I don't care what they do as long as it's brings them happiness. This part that he has saved for us to restore us to his will is essential to his plan as it is to our happiness. Your joy must be complete to let his plan be understood by those to whom he sends you. And in the, I used to really want to be kind of a missionary because I thought that was what God wanted me to do and what would benefit me the most. And in that thinking, and I was the one that was sent out into the world to share God's plan of salvation with people. But in this, it's kind of the opposite, that God is the one who sends the people to us. We don't have to go out and convert the world. They will see their function in your shining face and hear God calling to them in your happy laugh. So that's the message that they'll hear when he sends them to you, is they'll see your happiness on your shiny face and hear your laughter. And that's, God will send the people to you and to me to experience that. You are indeed essential to God's plan. Without your joy, his joy is incomplete. Without your smile, the world cannot be saved. While you are sad, the light that God himself appointed as the means to save the world is dim and lusterless. And no one laughs, because all laughter can but echo yours. You are indeed essential to God's plan, just as your light increases every light that shines in heaven. So your joy on earth calls to all minds to let their sorrows go, to take their place beside you in God's plan. God's messengers, and that's us, are joyous, and their joy heals sorrow and despair. They are the proof that God wills perfect happiness for all who accept their Father's gifts as theirs. This is exciting because it's so different than the way I experienced God for most of my life. I thought I was supposed to please God and make God happy. And in a way, you still do that, but it's actually, he gives us the gift of happiness. That's his will. Not that we be a God pleaser and serve him and worship him and praise him and make him happy. It's really just the opposite. It's kind of like when we let go of the idea of separation and realize that we are still one with pure happiness and pure joy and pure love, then that will light our face and put laughter in our voice, and we'll just shine. And that will be the part that is essential to God's plan for salvation, because he will send people to us to see that, and they'll be so blessed by the reality of that message that we have with just our existence, that they'll join with us and join with God, or understand that they've never left. We will not let ourselves be sad today, for if we do, we fail to take the part that is essential to God's plan, as well as to our vision. Sadness is the sign that you would play another part. Instead of what has been assigned to you by God. Thus you do fail to show the world how great the happiness that He wills for you, and so you do not recognize that it is yours. And this isn't like a pretending to be happy. This is a real happiness here. It isn't like, oh, I can't be sad, I have to pretend to be happy. Forget that. That's not what it's talking about. Today we will attempt to understand joy as our function here. And you see how we were talking about yesterday, how many of these words, different words like salvation and forgiveness are the same, or our function is forgiveness, or our function is healing, or our function is salvation. And here it says, and in another place, our function and our happiness is the same. Here it says our function is joy. So all these words are the same because they have the same content. They have the same outcome. So they're the same. Different forms, but the same. And you see that it's a common theme in this Course in Miracles. So today we will attempt to understand joy is our function here. If you're sad, your part is unfulfilled, and all the world is thus deprived of joy along with you. God asks you to be happy so the world can see how much He loves His Son and wills no sorrow arise to abate His joy. No fear beset Him to disturb His peace. You're God's messenger today. You bring His happiness to all you look upon, His peace to everyone who looks on you and sees His message in your happy face. So we will prepare ourselves. Now this is how we're going to find this happiness. We're not going to pretend to be happy. We will prepare ourselves for this day in our 5-minute practice periods by feeling happiness arise in us according to our Father's will and ours. Begin the exercises with the thought that today's idea contains. My part's essential to God's plan for salvation. Then realize that your part is to be happy. Only this is asked of you, or anyone who wants to take his place among God's messengers. That's all we have to do is be happy. That's the will of God. So think what this means. You have indeed been wrong in your belief that sacrifice is asked of God. Remember how we were talking about a little earlier, they used to think the will of God was sacrifice. Take up your cross and follow me and, suffer for Jesus and lay down your will and take on my will and all this. Just sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. And that's what most religions, a lot of religions teach, especially, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, which is the 3 Abrahamic religions. But we had it wrong. That's not what is asked of us. And even it says it in the Bible that, that God doesn't want sacrifice. Jesus said that to the people of His day. You but receive according to God's plan and never lose or sacrifice or die. Now let us try to find that joy that proves to us in all the world God's will for us. So we're going to be looking for that today, that joy. It's your function that you find it here and that you find it now. Not sometime in the future, but today. It's there for us. For this you came. Let this one be the day that you succeed. Look deep within you, undismayed by all the little thoughts and the foolish goals you pass as you ascend to meet the Christ in you. He will be there, and you can reach him now. What could you rather look upon in place of him who waits that you may look on him? What little thought has power to hold you back? What foolish goal can keep you from success when he who calls to you is God himself or herself? He will be there. You are essential to his plan. You are his messenger today. And you must find what he would have you give. Do not forget the idea for today between your hourly practice periods. It is yourself with a capital S who calls to you today, and it is him you answer every time you tell yourself you are essential to God's plan for the salvation of the world. So it's getting more and more exciting. What a blessing to know that we are essential to God's plan, and that his plan is that we all be happy. And that's all we have to do, is just be happy. And that happiness is inside of us, and it's there for us to find today. So may you find it, and have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for spending this time with me. And I just really do enjoy the fact that we are sharing these lessons together. So, have a good one.